Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Political Talk to JB. I am your host, Julian Boykin, and tonight I am joined by Mrs. Candice Duvieilh, who is running for Congress representing District 5 for the great state of Alabama. Candice, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Julian?
Doing pretty good. It's Sunday, so trying to get ready for another week. So trying to get the energy so I can hit the day full steam tomorrow. Tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to this point of having that passion of running for office.
I have loved government and kind of been fascinated by how government works since I was 16 years old, since I took US AP history in high school. And I basically have approached everything from a standpoint of hearing that particular teacher screaming participation is the hallmark of democracy in that room every day for a whole school year. After that, I got invited to a policy intensive in Washington, D.C. It was called Presidential Classroom. Very few people know what this is. It doesn't exist anymore, but it dates all the way back to the 60s. And what it was a program where high school students went and spent a weekend or a week at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And every morning we'd wake up and we would have like the headlines from the day on our doorstep for our hotel, and we'd go down to breakfast and we would actively debate the headlines in the news and what was going on in current events. And then we, during this time, actually wrote and debated mock legislation on the House floor in Congress and actually like passed that. So my passion for government started in high school, which led to me going to college where I got my bachelor's in public policy leadership at the Trent Lott Leadership Institute at Ole Miss. After graduating from there, I was really interested in nonprofit work, community engagement, civic engagement, things like that. So I carried on and got my master's in public administration with an emphasis in nonprofit management. After which I started teaching at a Title I school district in South Mississippi. I taught seventh grade English and special education. And during that time, the school principal sponsored me going to the local university, the University of Southern Mississippi, to get my doctorate in education. So I have always had a passion for government. As far as what led me to running, I have a 2-year-old daughter. She has to grow up in this country, and I feel like we have become more divided than ever. Our government is not working for us anymore, and we need qualified people to get everything back on track. So, taking my qualifications, my background into consideration, I decided that running for Congress is what I needed to do for the community. And anecdotally, I will tell you, I can promise you I never intended to run for Congress because if I did, I would have never taken my husband's last name. My maiden name was Dollar, like a dollar bill. And if I had known I was going to run for Congress, I would have kept that one. But Duvieilh is where we're at. So,
When we talk about our young people, our high school students, you and I, we grew up in a world where we had what we call VOTEC, vocational technical training. Nowadays, a lot of kids in high school, they don't get that experience. So, what's your plan trying to bring that back and making sure that our kids have other options besides military or college?
so for me, VOTEC is very important and we need more of that. We do have some school districts here in North Alabama that are investing in vocational training and vocational schools that have some just top of the line products or top of the line equipment for students to use and learn and train. We also have school districts in North Alabama that don't have that. So I would like to see the school districts partner up where we're not seeing two districts investing money in the same type of VOTEC training so that we can actually get maybe this school is doing coding and this school is doing welding and this school is doing mechanics or HVAC or something like that and cross those things. Another thing that I would like to see high schools specifically tap into here in North Alabama is the corporations, the aerospace industry, the defense industry, the farm industry, the agriculture industry, so that they can test out these jobs and decide if these are paths they want to follow, and then tailor their post high school plans based on that. And I say post high school plans because depending on what you intend to do, college is not the only way, right? College may be the way if you want to be an attorney, but college is not necessary really if you want to be a machinist. My husband is a custom machinist in the aerospace industry, and he got his training for that in the U.S. Army because he tried college and was like, not for me, and then enlisted in the military.
Well said. When we talk about infrastructure and jobs, especially in District 5, recently we just got news that Eli Lilly, a big time manufacturing and for pharmaceuticals, is coming to District 5, North Huntsville. So, how do we make sure that people Alabamians, we get first right of refusal on those jobs and making sure we're not having people coming from the outside taking those jobs away from the people of Alabama? Now, we all know that, yes, the companies are going to come, they're going to set up shop, they're going to have their people because their people have already been trained. They know what needs to happen, what steps need to take place. But how do we make sure once that happens, those jobs go to the people of Alabama first before we start trying to fill those slots outside the state of Alabama?
So I'm going to give you a couple different points here. The first that it just breaks my heart every time I see it. Anytime there's a post about growth in North Alabama, there's multiple people in the comments that are like, "Stop coming here. We don't want you." And that is, in my opinion, counterproductive. Growth is fine if we can do it sustainably, if we're future proofing our infrastructure for that. Right now, I feel strongly that Alabama's District 5 is working from a very reactive and defensive position. Specifically, recently we just had our sitting congressman brag about securing $12 million, I think it was, to upgrade the sewage and water treatment facilities in Ardmore, which is in Limestone County. And I looked it up, did the math, and that is enough to upgrade the sewage system to what it needs to be for the number of residents that are living there right now. But if you take into account the housing developments that are planned over the next 5 years, they will outgrow that and we will be right back here. So I would like to see our legislators future proofing when we are making plans about upgrading infrastructure like that. And that trickles down into our classrooms. If we have a company coming here, we should be able to run the statistics, figure out where people are kind of settling, and decide where we need more classrooms and more teachers. And because if a company like Eli Lilly is coming here and they're saying that I think by the end of it, after all the construction jobs are done, they're going to have 450 jobs, I think is what they're planning to have here, which means 450 potential families. Even if you cut that in half and say 225 of those are families, if they have their children coming with them, if those families have one or two children, you're looking at 300 or 400 students that we have to put in classrooms somewhere.
Correct.
That's not an insignificant number of children that it's going to have an impact on our education system. So for me, it is about future proofing and making sure that we're not just catching up to where we are, but that we're planning for where we will be. The next piece of that is the traffic. The traffic in North Alabama is a nightmare. And they're trying to play catch up by expanding roads, which is great. But I think the only way that we really solve the traffic problem is to attack it from multiple directions. Yes, adding more space on the road for cars is fantastic, but also public transportation to take cars off the road will also help relieve that pressure, right? And
Correct.
then bike paths. Millennials love a good e-bike. If we had more bike paths, more ways for people to actually get to and from work that doesn't require a car, it's better for the environment and it takes pressure off of our roads. So I think a lot of times we hear politicians say, I'm going to fix it and I'm going to expand 565. But really, yes, we need to do that. But there's other parts of this that will help relieve the issue as well. And we could do it more, it could be executed sooner than adding lanes to an interstate or a state highway, right? I think right now, the latest thing they put out is that they are planning to get some engineers to come look at traffic flows to decide how we need to expand our roadways. And they hope to have those studies done by 2030 so that they can start planning to build roads.
Okay.
Like, that is the most convoluted way of saying we don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to keep bringing people here that I've ever heard. So for me, infrastructure is multifaceted, but the core of solving that problem is going to lie in future proofing, not just catching up to the problems we've already created.
I think we're probably, excuse me, I think we're probably about 10 years behind the curve. So prior to COVID, I think if you, the sweet spot might have been 2015 to 2019. We could have started, if we would have started expanding 565 around that time, I believe we would be in a better position now if we'd have started just 10 years ago. Because it's
Mhm.
not like the growth in Huntsville or North Alabama was a shock. It's nobody was shocked that North Alabama was growing. Once, Madison Square Mall was torn down, you had Topgolf come in, you had Dave and Buster's come, so you already started to see the shift happening. Mid City came, you know, once you got to Toyota Stadium, you start seeing all these restaurants popping up. My family, we left in 2017. We come back in 2023. North Alabama was almost unrecognizable. So at some point, you got to say, all right, we didn't properly plan for the growth that we were anticipating. And to your point, Space Command is coming. So I guarantee you, the studies that's being conducted now probably will be irrelevant. That data is helpful, but it's not going to be able to give you what you're looking for so you can know how to implement that future proofing or the future planning just based on the fact. Prime example, we need an easy pass lane like you have in other major cities, which is basically a paid cheat code. You get to skip the line for a fee, and the prices vary based on what time of day it is. So if
A
it's 6
Hovlane.
a.m.,
Yeah.
when I used to drive from Maryland to Virginia or to DC, if I left the house at 5:30, I got to work probably no, I think if I left at 5 a.m., I would get to my job by 6. Well, you go through several toll roads and there's little checkpoints. The closer you get to 7 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., the higher the fee is. So I knew if I left the house at a certain time, I could save a few pennies by hitting those checkpoints early before the rush hour started to happen. I believe we need that at Huntsville. The problem is certain spots on 565 you cannot expand just because you already have businesses right there. They're established. So it's going to cost way too much money to lift those companies up and move them back 100 to 500 yards. You're talking about plumbing. You're talking a lot of different things. So it's one of the things where you say, okay, we expand 565 to go 3 lanes from one side coming from Scottsboro all the way going towards Decatur. You expand it to 3 lanes going 565 east and west. However, why not just go ahead and build new off um, back roads? Make them 2 lanes. You can have more than one that crosses the Tennessee Bridge, and it alleviates a lot of the stress going to Decatur, going to Coleman, going to Priceville and Hartsel and things of those natures, where we can try to figure this out. Because as Space Command is coming, and we're talking about the study that you're mentioning, I'm wondering, like, okay, will that data be relevant by the time Space Command comes? Because that's what, another 4,000, 5,000 jobs.
That's a very important question to ask. And first of all, Hovlane, mind blown. Not even something I had considered. It's a wonderful idea. And what you're talking about, having to move those businesses to expand those roads and everything, that is why after the Space Command announcement happened and they had the meeting of the minds on 19 News and all of that, and the mayor of Huntsville was like, well, we have $380 million for road expansions. That is not even close to enough money. It sounds like enough if you don't really look at it, but it is not even close to enough money to solve the problems we have. I also didn't answer your whole question, so I'm going to circle back. You did ask specifically about jobs. Another thing where it's like the infrastructure issue, if we don't ask the right questions, we're not going to get the right answers. And with jobs, that's a huge thing because with Eli Lilly, the headline said Eli Lilly's bringing 3,300 jobs to North Alabama. And then if you read the article, it says 3,000 of those are short-term construction jobs just to build the facility. So those people are not even going to be living here. There's a chance that their income taxes are not being paid to the state of Alabama. They will be staying in hotels. They will be leaving every weekend. They're not going to be spending their entertainment dollars here. That's how construction crews operate. So at the end of the day, what they're saying is actually about 400, 450 jobs are being created long term here. The next question we need to ask is how many of those people are pre-existing employees of Eli Lilly that are going to come here to set up standards, set up shop, and actually get things going here? And how many of them are going to employ actual Alabamians? How many of them are going to employ graduates from Alabama A&M? How many are going to employ graduates from UAH? These are questions that we should be able to ask our representatives, and they should have answers to them. And it is something that needs to be part of the negotiation with the corporation. I understand that we want corporations to come here to pay our employees, but we've also positioned ourselves as a very as a great place for corporations to come and set up shop. We have the Tennessee River, we have the railroad, we are set, we have the arsenal, we are set up in a way that is beneficial for corporations. And I think it's time that we start expecting that they give back to our community while they're taking from our community at the same time. It needs to be a partnership. And I'm going to go down the rabbit hole. Another big issue that I have is with our public school funding. The number one lobby against increased millage rates in the state of Alabama is corporations because they don't want their property taxes to go up, right? Your property taxes are what fund the schools. And the corporations, their kids don't live here, they don't go to school here, so they don't want to pay higher property taxes. That to me is a huge problem. We need to have these corporations paying their fair share, especially if they're going to be setting up 1,000-acre facilities.
Well said. When we talk about access to healthcare in rural areas, District 5 is definitely a hot topic because what if you're having a heart attack? Just say you're in Lawrence County. Chances are you might have to take an Uber just to get to a hospital in what, Huntsville?
Mhm.
As opposed to waiting on an ambulance, which might take an hour, hour and a half just to get to you, check you out. You talking maybe 20 to 45 minutes, give or take. And we're talking another ride back to the hospital from Lawrence County, which is what, an hour, hour and a half, give or take, on what day it is, what time it is, what's going on in the city. So that's a matter of life and death. How do we fix it to where we can have access to healthcare in rural areas?
So the first thing people always want to argue and be like, oh, well, there's a hospital in the Shoals and in Florence and not the Shoals, there's a hospital in Florence and Lauderdale County. And yes, but Huntsville Hospital is the only level one trauma center between Birmingham and Nashville. So all of the residents in between those two areas are getting transported to Huntsville Hospital. If you go to, say, Florence Medical Center, they're going to patch you up, put you on a helicopter in the best case scenario, and take you to Huntsville Hospital. So Huntsville Hospital is already dealing with all that added pressure. Then we add in that Huntsville Hospital is magnanimously buying up all these rural hospitals to keep them open. But the first thing that's being closed is the emergency room because emergency rooms don't make money historically. And I could get into, we've got to address that issue. I'll circle back. My first policy proposal that is actually going to have to be executed at the local level with the cities and counties here is that right now, so it's mimicking a policy that exists in Philadelphia, which is that you are not allowed to shut down your emergency room unless there is another emergency room within a certain distance of the one that you're closing. Just full stop. You are not allowed. You can shut down anything because with these hospitals, if you shut down certain other units, certain other care facilities where people can make an appointment and make plans to get to Huntsville for those services, those are the ones that need to be closed, right? So we have to put people first when we're making these decisions. The other thing from the federal level that is actually built into my medical, like healthcare policy plan, is that we have to amend EMTALA because EMTALA is the law that says that emergency rooms have to treat any patient that comes in their doors, regardless of their ability to pay. And what has happened as a result of that is a lot of insurance companies have decided to take advantage of this law and not cover emergency room care because they know that legally, based on federal law, the emergency rooms have to eat that if that bill doesn't get paid. So we have to amend EMTALA to hold insurance companies accountable for paying for emergency care. Now, I know not all insurance companies do that. Not all insurance plans do that. My insurance plan covers emergency care, but a lot of the cheaper plans that's all that people can afford do not cover emergent care. And for me, that's a problem, and it is leading to the closing down of our emergency rooms. So for me, that's a big issue. The other one is what you're talking about. Because of the emergency room situation, there are many physicians in Huntsville that know for an absolute fact if a farmer in Moulton, in Lawrence County, falls off their columbine and rips their leg off, they are not going to make it to an emergency room in time to survive that injury. Because even with flashing lights, if 565 is jammed up, the ambulance is not going to be able to get to the hospital as fast as it needs to. That is just the bottom line of the infrastructure problem we're dealing with. So we have to make sure that in the rural parts of our district, people have access to the care that they need because a lot of times those incidents aren't predictable.
Speaking of farmers, you mentioned something to me about our farmers not having Wi-Fi, and that is very detrimental when they're trying to do business. So, when they need Wi-Fi just to, even if they're trying to sell their products, and they say, "Hey, we accept cash and card, but you know what? If you don't have the Wi-Fi, you need to be able to connect a Q card, a Square card, to do a transaction." That's detrimental to their business.
Mhm.
How do we ensure our farmers in District 5 to get the adequate Wi-Fi that they need to be able to add more customers, more growth to their business?
So the first thing that we need to do is, as a society, accept that internet is not a luxury, that it is a basic necessity in 2025. What you're saying, a farm cannot do business in 2025. They can't get in touch with their suppliers. They can't communicate with incoming trucks. They can't communicate with customers. Beyond that, if their children have schoolwork to do, a lot of the new curriculums that are being built rely on Google Classroom. They rely on access to internet. A lot of times, discipline and communications from schools rely on the internet for those things to happen. So we have to accept that the idea, like back during COVID, where they said like we had parents parking in the McDonald's parking lot so that their kids could use Wi-Fi, right? Um, that was somehow them, working extra hard. But I feel like we should take that as like, no, we've reached a point in our society where everyone needs access to Wi-Fi. So with that comes, that's going to be part of infrastructure. We build power lines, we build water. We need to make sure that we're building broadband access in these areas.
Two more questions. First question, if people want to ask more questions, get to know you better, make a donation to your campaign, how can they get in contact with you?
So you can go to my website, CandiceDuvieillForCongress.com. Under the Contact Me section, you can get my PO box, my phone number. You can sign up to receive emails, and you can also sign up for a coffee chat with me, which is 15 minutes, time of your choosing. I will call you and we will talk about the issues most important to you. Because a lot of times you look at my platform on the website, you'll read it, but you want to know how it applies to you. Let's have that conversation. I'll call you whatever time you see fit. I'm also Candice for Congress on all of the socials except Facebook, where I'm Candice Duvieilh for Congress. And on my website, there's a giant donate button and a place where you can get a yard sign if you want one.
Last question. Why should the people of District 5 vote for you as their next representative of Congress?
All right. So, Julian, I do not believe that every district across the United States needs a policy expert at the federal level, but our district has the Redstone Arsenal, where we have defense contractors, we have direct defense spending, we have a Smithsonian installation, we have USDA grants and spending with our farmers. Our schools are largely funded by the Department of Education buy federal funds. Our infrastructure comes from federal funding bills. We have excessive, Medicaid, Medicare, all of that is happening in this district. And I firmly believe that this district uniquely needs someone that understands all those different levels of government policy and government accounting and how that trickles down to the community living here. And I believe that that is what I bring to the table, is real answers and knowing the questions that have to be asked to make sure that legislation is actually working for the people of Alabama's 5th District.
Ladies and gentlemen, Candice Duvieilh, who is running for Congress, representing District 5, great state of Alabama. Candice, best of luck to you in your campaign. Have a great night.
Thank you, Julian.